Werewolf of Winter Woods, written by Joel M. Andre, read for you by Scott MacDonald. For my father, Jerry Andre. Crisp snow crunched beneath the heavy black boots of the hefty lumberjack as he trudged along the old trail leading through winter woods. A haunting howl of an icy winter wind whisked past him ominously as the skeletal branches of the trees menacingly hovered above him. Falling flakes of glistening snow twirled and danced around him, drifting to the glistening blanket of diamonds collecting in powdery piles of wintry white. Several shimmering snowflakes collected on his slick beard of ember red. Several flakes stuck to the flannel of his shirt, tucked into blue denim, and yellow suspenders supported the fabric to prevent slippage. Strung over his back, a burlap sack filled with the food and supplies he had picked up earlier in the town. His deep sea-green eyes shifted across the landscape. He raised his black leather-gloved hand to the warm red copper-colored hair and brushed his long bangs from his face. A scowl crossed his weathered lips. The storm struck sooner and more sinister than his wife had predicted. Had he known how things would have been, he would have taken his old black pickup truck. But with the financial strain put on things because of a recent move, he wanted to save himself from an end-of-the-month struggle, which he often experienced waiting for his next retirement check to become deposited into his account. It was merely a pittance and a formality to reward the elderly for their years of breaking their backs to bring wealth to others. While billionaires counted their mounds of blutgelds, they rewarded workers with 1,000 Armitsil for their dedication to helping generate extreme wealth for the elite. But his mounting medical costs, caused by the strain of his lifetime of working mixed with elderly age, the monthly stipend he received didn't meet his basic needs. So as the kings dined without a worry in their mind, those in poverty watched their golden years stolen from them. So they spent their final years of suffering and misery. Fortunately, there were villagers and other kind-hearted individuals who witnessed the cruelty of the rich, who would care for the sick and worn. Though many in their older age forgot the value of a person, the moment they no longer viewed them as viable. So the elderly and the worn became further impoverished and broken. Pausing for a moment, he listened to ensure there wasn't the sound of anything besides the surrounding wind. Silence surrounded him, and for a moment he felt safe. There were terrifying tales of a beast of lore, with fangs that would rip through a person's flesh. Blow by blow, it would beat with bloody claws until a sludge of blood, organ, and flesh was all that remained. Bones picked clean of their flesh, marrow sucked from the core, and jagged gnaw marks being the only evidence of the creature's attack. He knew the legends of lore. Werewolves appeared under a full moon. It would take silver piercing their heart to bring their demise. But he also knows that evil lies. With its lies, it ensures misinformation becomes scattered and is relatively easy to find. With enough repetition, these lies become a mantra, and soon a simple slogan became a battle cry of misinformation. For years, witches, demons, goblins, and ghouls had been flooding the supernatural market with malicious misleads. So when mortals face them alone, they think they could easily defeat the beasts of darkness. Instead of finding that, they intentionally omitted things from legends and lore. It took something far more than silver to kill a werewolf. Silver was enough to put a werewolf into suspended animation. As soon as they took the silver from the wound, the werewolf heals, and is far more enraged than the moment you left it behind. With an unholy bloodthirst for revenge, it intensifies the destruction with brutal blood beatings. Its senses intensified. It can hear the softest beat of a heart miles away, and the beast becomes drawn to it. Because as the tune of the sailors on the sea like to sing as they work away the day, our hearts sing a siren song through the day and all night long. The heart in his chest quickened at the very thought something as simple as the speed it was beating could lure the beast through the night to his side and bring him his demise. Pausing, he closed his eyes and tried to ease his mind, his ears listening for the slightest sound of something which could approach him. With a heavy sigh, his breath fogged in front of his face before he continued to trudge along through the snow. Lifting his nose, he tried to inhale the scent of the surrounding area to see if he could smell the sinister sweat of a sweaty beast. As the cool and fresh air tickled and cooled his nose, it simply smelled clean, and the chilled air was refreshing to draw in through his nostrils as it helped to ease some of the stress he felt. There was an underlying scent of a wood stove burning faintly, floating from the darkness from deeper in the woods. When he was little, he always assumed the werewolf of winter woods was nothing more than a legend to keep curious children from venturing out into the woods. Soon, becoming long lost, in occasional memories from his youth that would reflect on the local police writing a death off as being a victim of the wolf. The number of closed casket funerals he experienced in his youth was enough to suggest the truth of these crimes were being hidden from him to his young mind. But now in the woods, he realized if the remains were grisly enough, there wouldn't be an open casket. From the darkness of the woods to his left, he heard a gentle sound of snow crunching. He paused for a moment as his heart quickened. "Is someone there?" His voice boomed in the darkness. "I have a silver bullet and a gun on my side." Another gentle crunch of a cautious footstep sank into the surrounding snow. The man scanned the surrounding area. "You need to calm down, Cole," he whispered to himself. "It's probably just a wild animal trying to sneak as silently as it can until it can find itself a shelter." The sound of snow crunching beneath feet intensified to a rapid pace. His heart beat faster in his chest as he heard footsteps in the snow approach him faster. Slam, crunch. Wind howled a warning as it slammed against him, as the footsteps slowed in pace, as the snow continued to crunch as something beyond the visibility of the snow approached him. Slam, crunch. "Please," Cole pleaded into the snow-filled darkness. "Just let me go home to my wife. I won't strike you with my silver bullet if you just let me go in peace." Again, the footsteps quickened as the sound of crunching snow rapidly approached him, drew in closer. Raising his arms, he attempted to shield himself as he closed his eyes and drew back in terror. The footsteps stopped in front of him, and he could hear a creature breathing before him. Instead of the smell of a sweaty beast, he smelled the scent of sweet bubble gum. A loud pop caused him to open his eyes quickly in terror. As his eyes adjusted, he saw a little girl in a pink parka which matched the pale pink of her winter wardrobe. An eerie smile crept slowly across her tiny lips as she looked at Cole. "Hello," called a little girl's voice. "Where is my mommy?" Fear turned to disgust on the man's face. A scowl crossed his lips as his eyes burned in annoyance. "Get lost, kid," he grunted. "Winter woods is no place for children." Tears burst from the icy blue eyes of the child as her eyes pleaded with the man. "Mommy!" her strained voice screamed. Tears bubbled and spilled from the edges of her eyes as they grew puffier the more the tears dripped down her face. "Where is my mommy?" Cole gave the girl a disapproving look. Snot was bubbling and dripping from her nostrils as she lifted the sleeve of her pink parka before she snorted as she drew the fabric across her nose. "I do not know," he replied. "You need to leave. The woods are no place for children after dark." "Mommy!" groaned in desperation as her tearful eyes pleaded with him. "I don't know your mom," the man said as he shrugged. "Just go back towards town." "Where?" helplessly asked the girl. "I am not from around here." Cole paused and looked at the girl. It was clear she was freezing and hungry. There was no way she was older than 5 years, and Cole could see how upset and frightened she was. As his head dropped, he let out an exasperated sigh as he forced a smile to his face. "My name is Cole," he responded. "Where was your mother before you met me?" The little girl paused and squinted her face, then frowned, and her face withered as she tried to think about the last time that she had seen her mother. "The monster was playing with her, Cole," whimpered the little girl. "Mommy screamed. She said, 'Run, Mindy, run!' I did. She was just somewhere." Loud sobs echoed from the girl's lips as Cole cautiously looked her over. There was something which felt off about the little girl. "Okay, Mindy," Cole replied. "What did the monster look like?" "It looked human, then it didn't," Mindy whispered in terror. "What does that mean?" Cole pressed. "The monster was hiding as a human," Mindy replied. "What if he followed me?" Slowly, Cole turned around in circles in the heavy falling snow. His tracks and the little girl's tracks had already become covered with the falling snow. "I don't think it did," Cole replied. "Is there anything else you can remember about what happened?" "It made her spit red," Mindy replied. "Its hands became knives. The more she screamed, the more the monster covered her in red." "Like blood when you get hurt?" Cole asked. "No, like when you get hurt," Mindy replied. Her eyes glistened with tears beyond the falling snow. A slight grin crept across her lips. "You bleed too?" Cole replied. "Everyone bleeds. When anyone gets hurt, we bleed. The blood is red." Mindy looked back at Cole blankly as the tears continued to trickle down her cheek before she burst out again in a wailing scream. "Is Mommy dead?" Mindy screamed. "Please, mister, I need my mommy." His heart raced as he heard her shrill shrieks. If it were the werewolf of winter woods, her screams would only draw the beast in closer to them. He wasn't in the condition of battling a beast. Cole hesitated for a moment in thought as he scanned the area again. There was no way for him to figure out where she had come from, and the weather was too terrible to take her back to town until the storm passed. "I don't even know which way to take you," Cole replied. "Do you just want to come back to my place? My wife, Estrella, has her cauldron on and is boiling something for dinner. We rarely have children, but I think she would be fine with you being there for dinner." Mindy stopped crying for a moment. She wiped the tears from her icy blue eyes and scanned Cole's sea-green eyes. His face softened for a moment, and she grew more trusting and comfortable. Is it macaroni and cheese? Mindy asked slowly. With chicken nuggies? Cole looked at the little girl who had stopped crying. He forced a smile and nodded his head. Something like that, kid, Cole replied and turned his head away. I love dipping my nuggies in cheese, making cheesy nuggies for me, Mindy sang. A scream of icy wind slammed against the pair. It chilled Cole to the bone. The little girl didn't seem bothered by the blast of air. Cole hesitated for a moment and looked around. If it wasn't a little girl in the middle of a heavy snowstorm, he could just tell her to keep going her way. But he knew her chances of survival were as low as his if they both remained out in the snow. Let's get out of here, Cole said. As soon as the snow stops, we can go with warm food in our bellies and try to figure out where you live. Mindy blinked her eyes slowly, then looked at Cole. Her lips gave a hopeful grin. What about Mommy? Mindy asked. Cole grabbed the child's wrist gently, and then took her head and guided her towards deeper into the darkening woods. Normally we would try to find her, Cole replied. There is nowhere we will find her in the storm right now. It will be safer to go back to my home. Monsters bringing children into their homes, Mindy anxiously replied. Mommy told me little girls get hurt by bad people. Those monsters are real, Cole said. When you see them, you always fight back. Sink your nails into their flesh. Make sure you hurt them worse than they have ever been hurt before. You will never get in trouble for defending yourself. The more injuries you give them, the better. If someone tries to hurt you and you can get any piece of them into your mouth, you bite down with all your teeth, like you are chewing a big hunk of meat, and you keep biting until you draw blood. Don't worry about hurting the monster. They aren't afraid to hurt you, and you can't be afraid to hurt them. But are you a monster? Mindy asked as she fought back another spray of tears. Cole crouched before the little girl. A friendly smile crossed his face. I'm not a monster, he promised. You can trust me. Mindy looked at the man and nodded. Can we slow down? Mindy asked. You are moving too fast for my tiny feet. Cole looked at the little girl and lifted her onto his shoulders. He shifted the burlap sack he was carrying. Sit still and don't squirm, Cole warned. I don't want you to fall and get hurt. Taking a step forward, he felt the increased strain on his back and his knees from Mindy. He tried to distract himself by going over the checklist of chores he would need to still finish tonight, so he could bring the girl back to town as soon as the storm passed. On his shoulder, Mindy grew bored and started to shuffle around as she tried to whistle a tune. Soon, above them, the skeletal branches of the trees grew closer together, and the snow faded. The trail soon clear of stone and nothing more than dirt, root, and stone beneath their feet. The trees continued to become thicker, and soon vines and branches became intertwined along walls lining the trail as the pair continued into the deepest and darkest section of the woods. This is my home, Cole replied as he set down Mindy. The little girl looked around at one wall and slowly she slid her hand along it. A splinter pricked into her pointer finger and she drew back. Mindy shook her hand in pain and cried out before sucking on the tip of her finger. Cole extended his right hand to her, and she withdrew the finger from her mouth and placed it in his hand. It's all real wildlife creating the walls, Cole offered. My wife and I, we believe in maintaining a peaceful bond with the nature that surrounds us. Would you like to see some magic? Cole pulled the splinter as it slid from the child's finger with ease. See? No blood, Mindy exclaimed. Show me magic. Nervously, Cole scanned the girl and shook his head. He raised his fingers in front of him and channeled the power into the surrounding area. Flowers of darkness, bloom if the child is harmless, Cole cautiously chanted. A sudden burst of warmth slammed against the pair as the walls became alive. Brittle brown branches grew limber with life and sprouted leaves of green. A rainbow of colors trickled along the vines on the wall, while a ruby-red fruit with golden spikes hung from the branches of the tree. Carefully, Cole reached up to pluck the fruit, cautiously avoiding the sharpest points of the spike. As he plucked it from the tree, a low moan rumbled out through the darkness. Reaching into his pocket, he cut the spikes from the fruit and then sliced it open in half. A blood-red juice spilled from the interior, while the flesh of the fruit was a clover green. He offered a slice of the fruit to Mindy, who looked back cautiously. Smell it, Cole offered. Mindy drew the tiny fruit to her nose and inhaled. It smelled of lilac and rose with a hint of honey and vanilla. It smells pretty, Mindy replied. Now taste it, Cole replied. Lifting the flesh of the fruit to her mouth, Mindy took a bite. A crisp sound came as her teeth broke through the flesh, followed by the sound of crunching as her tiny eyes doubled in size. Cheesy nuggies, Mindy whispered in awe. It's called Merlonian fruit, Cole replied. It can tell what tempts your taste buds at the moment, so you can always enjoy the flavors you want without having to spill the blood of other creatures. It can taste like the juiciest steak you've ever had, or even the sweetest ear of corn you've ever experienced. Anything? Mindy asked. Whatever your heart desires, the Merlonian fruit will capture the flavor, Cole replied. A pair of heavy combat boots noisily approached Cole and Mindy from further into the living quarters of the home. A woman, dressed in a black leather dress, approached them, her skin a warm cinnamon, while her hair ivory with streaks of raven black in it. Her hair was silky and long as it spilled down her shoulders and down to the small of her back. The woman's eyes were both differently colored, with the left eye an emerald green, while the right eye was a sapphire blue. Why would you bring a beast into our sanctuary, my love? Demanded the old woman. Estrella, this is a young girl named Mindy, Cole excitedly replied. She lost her mother, my love. I figured, perhaps, we could have her for dinner. Estrella approached the girl and leaned in and sniffed her head. Disappointment crossed her wrinkled lips. Her mother fell victim to the wolf? Estrella asked. This is unfortunate, dear husband. Mindy looked at the pair, nervously. Oh? Cole asked, perplexed. Why is this unfortunate? How do you feel, child? Estrella asked. Mindy struggled to keep her eyes open as they blankly looked ahead before rolling back on her head. Her body convulsed as saliva dripped from the corner of her mouth. I don't feel good. Mindy struggled to speak. Yes, well, you would feel ill, Estrella coldly replied. The Melonian fruit will poison those who use magic for deception." Mindy looked at Estrella. Cole stepped away from the little girl cautiously. "My beloved," Cole asked cautiously, "what have I brought into our sanctuary?" Disgust and displeasure crossed Estrella's face. She shot an angry glance at her husband. "You brought home a Gleeger," Estrella whispered. "You've given away secrets to our enemies." A burst of purple flames encompassed the girl. It burned the flesh from the bones and left them a burnt black. Where the icy blue eyes of Mindy once were, they now were a hateful red heat burning from them. With a snarl and snap, the creature's tiny teeth burst into razor-sharp fangs. The bone of her fingers curved into flesh, ripping claws resembling curved blades of a knife. "You lured me to your den of death." A demonic voice spilled from beyond the vicious teeth, while a sulphuric stench spilled out from beyond the bone. "It's not my fault that my husband is a sentimental fool," Estrella hissed. "I recommend you leave on your own before I blow your bones back to hell." With a sudden howl of rage, the Gleeger lunged towards Cole, striking him in the middle of the chest with its talons ripping through his flesh. Cole frantically fought with the relentless strikes to his flesh as it tore and ripped the flesh from within him. Screaming in agony, Estrella watched in horror as the creature continued its carnal assault on the man she loved. Suddenly, a heavy popping sound as his backbone broke, and the creature ripped his spine from his corpse before tossing his remains like a lifeless rag doll to the side. Cole's bloody body slapped the ground with a sickening thud. The beast turned its attention to Estrella. "Cole!" Estrella cried in anguish. "Your suffering will be tenfold the agony you've given my heart." Shadows of hate crossed Estrella's face as an evil wind groaned. Rage reflected in her eyes. Her face grew a deeper shade of maroon, and her body trembled. Thrusting her fingers to the heavens above, she let out an ear-piercing shriek as the leaves and flowers wilted and died in seconds around them. A scent of decay filled the room as Estrella drew in closer to the creature. "With magic, you coerced. Now back to hell. You become cursed," Estrella hissed. Channeling her inner energy, a flash of light illuminated the area for a second. A claw burst through the ground and ripped the Gleeger into the bowels of hell. A horrifying hiss screeched as the molten earth cooled and sealed up around the portal Estrella had opened. Falling to her knees, Estrella could feel the coolness of her black tears dripping down her face. She felt the darkness clawing through her muscles as embers of hate burned in the fragments of her soul. Rage filled her veins with a desire for an unholy vengeance. With her footsteps striking the ground angrily, she made her way to the remains of her husband, Cole. She pulled the burlap sack from his side and fished through the contents. The head of a blonde woman and several hunks of flesh torn clean from the bone were inside. "You packed yourself a to-go doggy bag, my love," Estrella replied, choking back the tears. She never had the heart to tell her beloved Cole. It was he who was the werewolf of winter woods, while she always dreamed of a time when the memories of the beast would spill into the mind of the man. She never felt it was her place to open his eyes. Instead, She loved him for the darkness he maintained inside.
I will avenge you, my love,
Estrella promised.
I would rather have some of you, my beloved, instead of none of you.
Thrusting her fingers in the air, she moved them with the energy currents and chanted.
Fires cursed with the words of liars, bring retrieval to an ancient evil, one with death on its breath, with the hate of revenge, for my rage to be avenged.
Green flames burst from the ground and spray brittle gray stone and dirt. As black smoke billowed from the ground, it found its way to burn into Estrella's lungs. The pain was agonizing, but she knew if she gave into her pain, the beast would blend with her own soul instead of reconnecting with her beloved's body.
Reanimate this inanimate corpse in front of me, demon knife free. May they charm it enough to bring harm with your evil spirit so others fear it. Something hairy and scary.
Suddenly, the smoke withdrew from her lungs and swirled around Cole's corpse before it spiraled into a black funnel and blended with the dead body. Slowly, the injuries sustained in the earlier attack healed. Bone regrew where the beast had ripped it. Flesh repaired as its veins filled with a blackened sludge of blood. Muscles built on the frame. And soon, the naked human frame of Cole stood before Estrella. Walking up to her deceased lover, Estrella kissed his lips tenderly. As she did, Cole's skull shot back and burst into flames as the pores of his body shot out thick, wiry strands of hair covering his entire body. Soon, the scorching flames subsided on the skull, and a sickening suction sound sounded as brain and flesh formed around the crackling bones, shifting and rebuilding the skull. Soon the shape was a hideous cross between human and wolf. His eyes, now sea green, transformed into yellow wolf-like eyes. Razor-sharp fangs filled its mouth as it let out a low, rolling growl. Soon the rest of his body continued to follow the structural transformation. His muscles thickened and tightened, and it built up the power and strength of the werewolf's frame. While Cole's feet grew longer, with pads designed to grip the earth and propel the beast faster after the prey it chased. Saliva dripped from the beast's mouth as Estrella reached to the skull of the beast and scratched behind its left ear. It snorted at the woman and growled in response.
My love,
Estrella whispered.
Is there any part of you that remains in the beast?
Before her, the werewolf looked back at her with nothing but low growls in response. Estrella lifted her finger to her green eye and gently wiped away a single black tear.
I am your master now,
Estrella firmly replied.
You will avenge the death of my beloved Cole. You will go out in the darkness and snow. You will cross the path of the one responsible for the Gleeger.
Growling in acknowledgement, the beast let out a horrifying howl. It blended the sinister sound of satanic shrieks with the hateful growl of a rabid wolf. Before it arched its back and then sprinted at impossible speed, it tore until the snow on the ground below melted away, leaves on the trees burst to life, and the sun crept into the sky with the warmth of a spring day, before slowing and bursting out beyond the woods under a new sky still plagued with the darkness of night. Behind the beast, Estrella soared through the sky in a mist of black and red. Enraged eyes focused on the very movement of the creature she had unleashed in her rage. When she discovered who brought the demise of her beloved Cole, she would unleash an unholy bloodlust in the beast, where it would slaughter everyone who crossed its path, crippling an entire community and clipping entire branches of family trees, snuffing their life out as mercilessly as the life of her beloved. A lustful smile of evil revenge crawled across her lips as she bit down. She drew blood, and she slid her tongue through the metallic warmth and savored its flavor for a moment. Her body thrust out as it yearned to be splattered in the blood and brain matter of the fool who summoned the Gleeger and ordered the death of Cole. It will be an honor to bathe in their blood, the heat of the fantasy stimulating her, and she gripped her perky nipples and tugged them gently, while she dreamed of the tender fingers of her lost lover sliding down her cheek before his plump lips pressed against her, and his firm hands slapped against her buttocks, his lips then kissing down her neck while his hands slid firmly to her waist, his hot breath heavy on her body, before he sampled her sweet nectar. With a loving yet firm grip, Cole would push her wrists into the shackles, slapping the metal shut and holding Estrella in place, his lips turning to gentle, loving nips as he worked them back up her body seductively. The hideous howl of the beast jerked her back to reality. Estrella shook her head as the locks of black and ivory spilled behind her, dancing through the wind, whispering with a sound like the keys of a piano in glissando. Hateful eyes transfixed on every movement her snarling beast made. Around them, the green grass became sparsely speckled with trees, as beautiful butterflies in a marbled red and black pattern played and danced as they landed on the patches of brilliantly colored tulips. Above, the sun grew brighter than before, as it hung high in a crystal blue sky, unblemished by a single cloud. Before her, Estrella watched as the werewolf slowed in front of a mound of dirt. An old wooden plank door covered the burrow. In the center of it was a blue butterfly with two elaborately elegant and exquisitely painted eggs. In the trees just beyond the door, bluebirds sang a joyful tune of life and celebration. Enraged, Estrella snapped her fingers as her body lowered in the mist until her combat boots were hitting the ground beneath her. Balling her hand into an angry fist, she banged rapidly on the door until her knuckles bled, and she slapped her palm against the door, every strike making an echo of a sound in the tunnel beyond the door. Finally, the door slowly opened in front of her. Estrella hissed in annoyance and took a step back. Soon, a multicolored rabbit stood before her. The fur on its head was half green and half blue, with a red, heart-shaped patch of fur around its beady black eyes. The rest of the body was a reddish copper color, a white tuft of fur for a tail that shimmered in a sparkling of magical dust wiggled in back as an emerald glove covered his right hand. His excited and welcoming smile melted into a fearful look as his eyes caught the werewolf just beyond the witch in front of him. A rainbow-colored teardrop slipped from the rabbit's left eye, and the rabbit brushed it away. "Estrella," the rabbit whispered in terror.
"Ernesto,"
Estrella coldly replied.
"Why are you in Hopper Hollow?"
Ernesto cleared his throat and attempted to sound fierce.
"The council spoke. They banished you to Winter Woods for your wickedness. Your kind doesn't belong here."
Indeed, Estrella hissed.
But why wouldn't the witch and warlock of Haunted Hollow take part in the darkest of arts? It is much harder to haunt the human realm when I only have wisps of magic to work with on one day a year, rather than the full, terrifying power of Halloween year-round.
I don't have time for your babbling nonsense, Ernesto snapped. Why is your shadow crossing my door? You know it is just days until Easter, and I am making my final preparations. Seething anger crossed Estrella's face.
You have your precious holiday to worry about,
Estrella snapped.
yet you still found the time to act so cruelly and bring an end to my beloved Cole. I come to enact my revenge.
As she fought back tears of agony, her eyes looked at the beast beside her. Pain turned to hate, and she focused her anger back on Ernesto. He is standing right there. Ernesto pointed at the werewolf. Do you both have no memory of when he turns into a werewolf, then?
I remember,
Estrella snarled.
I was there when he skinned your wife all those years ago, when you and your precious desire to reach out to the unloved taught you why others are wise enough to leave us alone, dreading anything they could do that would rattle our cages.
Ernesto snickered and spat to the side. Evil always loses the battle in the end. Ernesto scoffed. Whatever destruction you dream of, good will prevail and correct whatever discourse you caused it in the end. Coldly, Estrella drew in closer to Ernesto's face.
You made a mistake the moment you banished us,
snapped Estrella.
We created a plan so diabolical and evil. Cole kept me from unleashing my wrath all this time. My vengeance will bring absolute death to every creature that lives across every realm. Those who do not experience an untimely death will encounter a terrifying assault of pain that will escalate until the will of life flickers and fades from their eyes. Beloved beast, I command this rabbit. I damn.
Stretching her pointer finger at Ernesto, the once beautiful skin of Estrella burst into a ghoulish green. The dark magic within her soul burst and reflected on the exterior. Her skin, now speckled with disease, broke out in oozing wounds and pus-filled pockets. Her fingers twisted as the bones snapped, and the bone rebuilt and expanded as the tips turned to menacing talons. Shrieking, she thrust her finger forward. In response, the werewolf lunged at the rabbit, trying to shut the door, and knocked it back into the burrow. The door burst and splintered as the beast forced its way through. Ernesto screamed in terror as he tried to shove back the beast that was on him. As the werewolf slammed its frame into the rabbit's body, Ernesto had the wind knocked from him. His body trembled as he shook his head to regain focus as the claws ripped through his chest and tore his bowels from his body before the creature clamped down on Ernesto's head and ripped it violently from the body with a sickening snap. Enraged, the beast slammed its bloody claws, shredding the flesh of the remains into a disgusting pile of ribboned innards and ripped exteriors bloodily piled on the floor. "Dad," a youthful voice called out, "is everything okay?" From the shadows, a young rabbit slowly appeared.
"And the bloodline,"
Estrella commanded. In response, the beast lunged at the younger rabbit. It cut the tiny animal's shrieks and screams of agony short as the creature snapped the neck of the rabbit between its jagged teeth. Blood spraying out as the beast jerked its head violently back and forth as the limp remains of the rabbit hung from its mouth. Then it tossed the child aside, licking the blood from its claws. Throwing back its hideous head, the werewolf howled in celebration of the kill. Estrella came and caressed the shoulders of her wicked wolf and slid her fingers along his bloody cheek. She closed her blue and green eyes and suckled on the tip of her bloody finger. A moan escaped her lips as she sensed the underlying fear in the blood's taste.
"Come now, we must return to winter woods,"
Estrella said as she caressed the cheek of the beast. Raising her hands to the air, she summoned the black and red mist to return. Her body lifted as it became weightless and floated through the mist. In response, the wolf snarled and snapped before it leaped out of the burrow and bolted back towards the woods. Estrella soared through the sky. But from deep within the burrow of Ernesto Easter was a small rabbit in glistening gold. Unlike her father and brother, her fur hadn't changed to the colors of Easter. An embarrassment to the rest of the Easter family, her fur of pure gold. She tried to hide it. "Daddy," called out the rabbit with the golden fur. Silence. Anxiously, the rabbit fumbled with the bright yellow bow on her dress as she made her way through the wreckage and ruin. Her father always warned her that if anyone ever discovered her, a dark greed would lure them and bring about destruction and war. Despite her dad gave her the name Aurelia as a mockery of her appearance. Her entire wardrobe filled with nothing but yellow clothing, which accented the gold of her body. Cautiously, she hopped over to the grisly remains of Ernesto and the lifeless corpse of her brother Luke. Seeing them caused her to gasp before rainbow-colored teardrops trickled down her golden cheek. Her heart ached for Luke, who had just had the color of the fur on his head changed to a spiral pattern of blue, green, and yellow. It stood beautifully out against his chocolate-brown body. It was a cause for celebration, as this would have been the first Easter helping Ernesto hide the eggs and fill baskets. Now it was a colorful mess soiled with a bloody red. Aurelia turned her eyes away from the horror. "Who will deliver Easter this year?" Aurelia cried. "If no one delivers Easter to the human world, the portal between the holiday realm and the human realm will close. If we all lose our purpose, sadness and sorrow will take over, before only darkness and despair remain, which would only benefit Halloween Hollow." The young rabbit turned her eyes again towards the remains before her. "I wish you had taught me what to do," Aurelia replied. Hopping cautiously towards the door, she paused and hesitantly sniffed the air with her glistening golden nose. The scent of wolf and the witch had already diminished. Her tiny button-black eyes scanned the cheerful world surrounding her. There was so much life and happiness. A swarm of butterflies burst past her, marked in brilliant orange, yellow, blue, and red. They danced among the air currents before they landed on the fields of tulips. Aurelia made her way to the insects as they danced and played among the flowers. Reaching one, Aurelia touched a purple butterfly gently. It flashed into a burst of purple flames. It gave off a scent of sweet, juicy grapes.
"Get away from us!"
screamed the red butterfly.
"A monster!"
shrieked the yellow butterfly.
"She is killing us!"
shouted the blue butterfly.
"I didn't mean to kill her,"
Aurelia replied.
"I just wanted to feel her peace." "Vile rabbit!" screeched the red butterfly. "All your kind does is destroy."
Aurelia reached toward the tiny red butterfly as it shrieked in terror. Her fingers danced across the tip of its wings before it burst into red flames. The scent of sugary cherries swirled from the flames.
"Please,"
screamed Black and Red Butterfly,
"don't touch us. We will give you anything you want."
Aurelia drew her face near the creature speaking to her.
"I am not meaning to kill you,"
Aurelia replied.
"I just wanted to be friendly and pet you out of kindness." "Then you must not touch us with your bare hands,"
asked the Black and Red Butterfly.
"Where is Ernesto? If you get his emerald Easter glove, it will allow you to touch us if you feel the need to. You'll also find that nature reacts kinder to you if you covered your hideous face." "What do you mean?"
Aurelia asked.
"You are one of the most grotesque monsters I've ever seen,"
replied the Red and Black Butterfly.
"If you could find a mask to cover the golden glow of your face, it might help to prevent the disgust of other creatures, too. I am just concerned with your own safety." "What a truly awful thing to say,"
Aurelia replied.
"If I could claim it was the first time I heard it. But you are not the first to comment on the absolute disgust experienced in my appearance. Then I will take your advice right now. I just want to blend in. I need to figure out how to make Easter happen." "No, that is Ernesto's job,"
snapped the Red and Black Butterfly.
"Imagine if one of the human children sees how hideous you are. It would traumatize them for a lifetime. They would never want to experience Easter again." "Ernesto is my father,"
Aurelia replied.
"He is dead now." "My condolences,"
slowly replied the Black and Red Butterfly.
"Fortunately, Luke was ready to head out this year, so there will be no concern there, even though the death is sad. Let him handle it." "You don't get it,"
Aurelia replied.
"I am the last Easter bunny left." "But you're so hideous,"
gasped the Blue Butterfly.
"Were you adopted?"
"What?" Aurelia asked.
"No, for being so beautiful on the outside, you all are quite hideous on the inside. Imagine a creature like you feeling like you can judge the beauty of another," snapped the Green Butterfly. "Ladies, let's go." As the creatures took off into the sky, Aurelia felt a sadness cross her face. It would have been nice to have spent more time learning from the butterflies, and she regretted being so cold to them. As she headed back into the burrow, Aurelia again stopped at the remains of her father. On his bloody left hand was the emerald glove, now stained with ruby red blood. "I don't want this thing," Aurelia whispered. Hesitantly, she reached her hand to her dead father's. Slowly, her fingers wrapped around the glove as she gently tugged it loose, her heart beating wildly as she hoped and prayed there wasn't a reanimation curse on the corpse of her deceased father.
His blood still felt warm against her hand and was slick against the emerald. As it fully slipped from his head, the limp limb fell dead. A shrill shriek erupted suddenly and caused her heart to quicken. Aurelia turned to see the red and black butterfly from earlier peering into the burrow. "What's wrong?" Aurelia demanded. "I had forgotten how hideous your face was," screamed the butterfly. "You're really not helping me right now," Aurelia replied. "Put a mask on, and then we can talk," pleaded the butterfly. Aurelia made her way through the rubble towards her bedroom in the back. Loudly, she shifted through things. "What kind of mask do you want?" Aurelia called down the hall. "The one that covers the most skin," pleaded the butterfly. Minutes passed, and finally Aurelia walked down the hallway, her golden face covered in a bright yellow rabbit mask. "Hurry! We need to get you out of here!" cried the butterfly. "There's a hideous monster that just went back there to look for a mask." Aurelia pulled back the mask with a disgusted look on her face. The butterfly shrieked again in terror. "Put it back on," pleaded the butterfly. "Do you have a name?" Aurelia asked in annoyance. "Brittany," whispered the butterfly. "I don't know enough about Easter to know how to make the holiday happen, but I know this guy who makes Christmas happen over the course of an evening, so he must have some secrets he can give you. I am going to take you to Winter Woods to meet with Christopher. He knows what distribution, timing, present-to-candy ratios, and everything that needs to exist to make all this happen." "Are you mad?" Aurelia replied. "Why would I intentionally go to where the witch and the werewolf came from? They will sniff me out, and I'll be dead before we ever get to Kringle's part of the land." "You have a better idea?" Brittany asked. "Oh, no. Yeah, come on, let's go." With that, the butterfly flew out of the burrow. Aurelia dropped her head. She didn't want to follow the insulting insect, but the fate of the realm was apparently her responsibility now, and she needed to figure out what was going to happen. Hopping half-heartedly, she made her way outside. Clouds had filled the sky, and the world didn't seem as bright. The colorful tulips had lost some of their brilliance. "Hey, Barbie!" Aurelia called out. "It's Brittany, bitch!" snapped Brittany. "Now I bet you're wondering why the world isn't as bright as it was, Buttercup." "It's Aurelia, ass," Aurelia replied. "No, you don't do that," Brittany corrected her. "We absolutely will have none of that." Aurelia frowned. Brittany flew away. "Come on, Barracuda Breath," Brittany called out. Aurelia hopped in the butterfly's direction. Around them, the berries on the bushes seemed riper than usual. "All our realms are bleeding together," Brittany replied. "Winter, summer, spring, and fall, until we all progress to the point of Halloween, the darkest day of all." "Wouldn't that be closer to the winter solstice?" Aurelia asked. "When the least amount of light crosses the sky, as the longest night begins just before Christmas?" "Well, yes," Brittany replied. "But in terms of holidays, wouldn't it be Halloween? Christmas is a pretty joyful holiday." "Yes," Aurelia said. "But what if it is the darkness of night that the power depends on, rather than just the fear? The evil would know what to do with it." "You mean Estrella?" Brittany asked. "It would make sense," Aurelia replied.
I didn't think hideous people could be so smart, Brittany replied. It's how nature makes up for our appearance, Aurelia replied with snark. Yes, well, that makes sense, Brittany said. So, somewhere in Winter Woods? Aurelia asked. To just before we reach where Christopher lives, Brittany replied, saying, to where the witch and the werewolf hide, which explains the sudden burst increase in their power. I know the others had planned to let the evil elves continue to run Halloween since Estrella and Cole were never to go near it again. They only banished Estrella for 100 years, Aurelia replied. Cole for 250 years. They both could atone for their crimes and go back. The others were over visiting my father the other day. You rabbits are always up to no good, Brittany snapped. Come now, tell me all about this. I am intrigued to hear how your terrible choices are now impacting the rest of us. It wasn't my choices per se, Aurelia nervously giggled, but my father, Ernesto, Christopher, Valencia, Larry, Trapper, and Norman all met. They agreed Estrella and Cole were too evil to allow them to return to power, so my father sent a leaguer to rid the realm of their evil. Well, Cole met his end. Estrella appears to have survived. Whatever the werewolf is now, it isn't Cole. I am sure this was all your father's idea, Brittany snapped. The others wouldn't have been stupid enough to go along with that. Actually, it was Teresa's idea, Aurelia sheepishly replied. So, Teresa Tooth Fairy is part of the fantasy realm? Brittany demanded. Why is she deciding on the holiday realm? She was telling us how their realm removed its evil and everything is better now, Aurelia responded. Listen, do we have time for this right now? I am absolutely dumbfounded right now, Brittany replied. The leaps of logic. Then okay. So, being that Teresa steals the fallen teeth of children and adds them to her grisly garments she creates from them to wear as a fashion statement, you thought she would be the right person to trust? You forget. I wasn't making any of the decisions, Aurelia defended. Continue, Brittany sighed. Well, she had her little ghouls creep into the room and hand everyone a pamphlet of information. Aurelia continued. Ghouls are evil, Brittany said. You know ghouls are evil, right? Well, yes, but, Aurelia continued, she had magically transformed these into good ghouls who worked for her. To do what? Brittany asked. Well, they help her take the teeth from beneath the child's pillow and replace it with a quarter stolen from their parents, Aurelia replied. So, paying for stolen goods with stolen money? Brittany asked. Well, yes, Aurelia said, and shrugged. I mean, I don't think it is evil. Children have an entitlement to the money of their parents. What? Brittany scoffed. No, your parents raised you to where you can get out there and get a job. They need to save their money for their retirement so they can enjoy life. It isn't their responsibility to fund you through life and struggle in their later years just because they supported you early on. You earn your own living. You make your own way. When you can, you return the kindness and show your parents the love they showed you when you were growing up and care for them in their later years. People don't become disposable later in life. They still feel, still love, and the cruelest thing done to a person is to remove them from your life. Anyway, Aurelia continued,
She told us they removed evil from their realm, while handing out pamphlets with evil ghouls from her realm," Brittany interjected. "Like I said, they were good now," Aurelia snapped. "We, too, could be like them. We just had to exterminate the witch and the werewolf, and the best way to do that is with a gleeger. Easy to summon. Will do your bidding. Nice and simple. They are quite brilliant. It appeared impossible to lose, so everyone agreed to it, and they summoned the creature. Well, it was around that time everyone else had to leave. Then flash forward, and now here we are." "So everyone else was in your home recently?" Brittany asked. "Yes, see, my father had secretly arranged with Teresa," Aurelia continued. "So when he met with her, she agreed to make him the ruler of the holiday realm in exchange for his help in expanding on her surplus of teeth." "How?" Brittany asked. "My father would increase the amount of candy provided to each holiday to triple the amount," Aurelia replied. "That way, children would lose their teeth faster. Someone would also persuade them to eat more candy during their lifetime, and their adult teeth would be easier for the ghouls to collect. So her empire could expand, and she would then oversee the human realm, while Dad continued to monitor and manage the holiday realm." "But who takes care of the fantasy realm then?" Brittany asked. "Well, yes, but it would still be Teresa," Aurelia replied. "The holiday realm is time-sensitive. The other realms are not. As long as we don't miss a deadline, there is nothing to worry about. She would continue to bring peace to other realms and help each of them to rule in peace under her watchful eye." "So, she wants to control all the realms and needed a minion?" Brittany assessed. "Your father, being a sleazeball rabbit, sold our world out for his own power, not realizing that everything collapsed and fell apart as soon as Teresa collected her teeth. Knowing that with the death of the witch and the warlock, she never expected the witch would survive and the warlock would rise again as a werewolf. Well, yes, but—" Aurelia was cut short. "No, no," Brittany replied. "This wasn't a request for your opinion. Okay, I guess we need to meet with the others who were there and try to stop this from becoming a bigger issue. Who would be most receptive to talking to us about what happened?" "Probably Christopher," Aurelia said. "Okay, then off to Winter Woods," Brittany replied, and headed off towards them. "He's in the vault in our basement," Aurelia replied. "What's he doing there?" Brittany asked. "I forgot to mention my father killed everyone as part of the blood sacrifice needed for the Gluger," Aurelia said. "How did that slip your mind?" Brittany asked. "It didn't seem important," Aurelia said, and shrugged. "Plus, Teresa and the former evil ghouls weren't a part of that. It was just under the spell. So my father took a gun and put a bullet in the back of everyone's head. I cried. He told me to get my deformed face out of his." "Your face is quite hideous," Brittany acknowledged. "Rabbit fur should be full of bright colors, not a hideous glistening gold." "Yes, I am aware of how wretched I look," Aurelia replied. "I am very sorry." "I am wondering if you understand what that word means," Brittany replied. "Come on, let's just go to Winter Woods." In silence, the pair traveled. Soon the greenery faded and died. As they reached Haunted Hollow, Brittany paused and looked before she continued on again. The landscape, the most terrifying thing she had ever seen. She tried to shake it from her memory. We could try to get help from there, Aurelia suggested. Only death and terror will find a place there, Brittany replied. We need to focus and get this over and done with. How do you defeat a werewolf and a witch? Aurelia asked. Brittany stopped. Floating around, she faced Aurelia. What do you mean? Brittany asked. Well, you cannot kill a witch and a werewolf with the same materials, Aurelia replied. You need to sever her head from her body and stuff the mouth with blessed salt and holy water. Then break her fingers from her hand and dip each one in blessed wax, and bury the tips pointed to heaven while the base rests in a dusting of blessed ash. Then you have to ignite the rest of her corpse and cover the remains into flames. For a werewolf, you need silver, right? Brittany asked. A lot of the fairy tales you hear about creatures are completely twisted and wrong, Aurelia replied. Evil twists and transform information to play with the minds of others. Misinformation is the most powerful tool evil has. Look at the facts that lie in front of the rest of us. Computers and social media continue to cause confusion and to ignite the flame of hate. The hatred and rage bleeding from the manipulative pages of lies on computer screens is far more terrifying than anything else. In our realm, we face distorted facts to destroy an evil. In simple terms, Brittany asked. In our realm, we have to look beyond the lies and see where the shades of truth remain. With werewolves, it's actually copper needed to kill them. It must remain piercing the heart at all times. You then have to sprinkle them in holy water and command the evil from them back into the bowels of hell, Aurelia replied. Oh, my, Brittany gasped. Yes, Aurelia exclaimed. So now we must destroy the witch and the werewolf and make certain we finish Easter in time. In silence, the pair continued as the snow became thicker. Soon the trees and vines became thick and no life remained. Brittany looked around nervously. Is it somewhere around here? Brittany replied. Hello? Aurelia called out. No, girl, you go, yoo-hoo, Brittany sang out. Australia, darling, where are you, my dear sister? Brittany? Estrella's voice sang. Where are you, my love? Floating out on a cloud of red and black mist, Estrella settled on the ground. She looked from the butterfly to the rabbit. Okay, trickster, Estrella giggled. Show your true form. In a burst of green and blue smoke, Brittany transformed into her witch form. Her left eye was an evil blood red, while the other was a dead and a faded black. Hey, sister, Brittany hissed as a split serpent tongue slipped from between her lips. Thank you for coming to mourn with me, sister, Estrella cooed. Why, is there a disgusting rabbit here? I just rid our realm of these disgusting creatures. Did you bring me something to torture from Teresa's realm? You are always so thoughtful, my dear. No, dumbass, Brittany scoffed. This is Ernesto's kid. But I thought we killed the boy, Estrella snarled. Let's see what cold to your face. I always love admiring my husband's handiwork. The beast in there isn't our brother, Brittany snapped. Wait, excuse me, what? Aurelia asked. Witches are born in litters of 4, Brittany said, 2 male and 2 female. We pair up as adults to create our own litters of 4.
We keep expanding 4 by 4 until we have a majority of the population in an area. Then we expand out into new realms. No, Aurelia cried. Please, you were ready to kill my sister and brother, honey, Brittany snapped. All because we didn't know about your hideous existence. Is it an act of good to kill such an ugly thing? Estrella asked. A very valid concern, Brittany replied. Would you be willing to kill yourself for us? My father always told me that if you commit suicide, it will force you to relive the life you have, Aurelia replied. None of what you learn carries over, but each time it removes the blessings God gave you as the suffering amplifies. This potential curse lasts until you reach the point of the death He intended for you. I just imagine the suffering I have lived through. I really don't want to live it again with fewer wonderful moments. Your father is dead. If you killed yourself, you could live your life again with him then, Brittany offered. So it would give you the chance to have those moments again, and who knows, maybe you won't return with a hideously disgusting deformity. Doesn't that sound nicer than just to cease existing when we kill you? You're trying to entice me with lies, Aurelia replied. Had I known you weren't a butterfly, I wouldn't have followed you out here. Oh, poor hideous you, Estrella mocked her. Rabbits are the most disgusting and sinister creatures in existence. Don't think your life is anything more than a smear down the rear of your underwear. The world was better before witches existed, Aurelia responded. Nothing but evil and hate has ever come from your kind. You're the only one who stands between us and the damnation of the holiday realm, snickered Estrella. What about the other realms? Aurelia demanded. Have you forgotten already? Teresa is planning to break the holidays down. What are you planning to do when you cannot leave this realm and you've already brought death and destruction to all those who live here? We just have to slip through before the portal between realms closes, Brittany laughed. Once we have this realm doomed, there is no need for us to focus on efforts here. With holidays erased forever, the humans will have nothing to look forward to in their drudgery of life. Soon, their cycles will become more mundane until they lack any willpower to become overthrown. With the humans gone, Teresa will no longer have their teeth to entice her into the realm. Then what? Aurelia asked. Humans and holidays destroyed, then what? Without the imagination of mankind to fuel them and give them life, the fantasy realm will crumble and it will no longer exist, Brittany said. Systematically, our plan will continue to destroy the other realms. With every realm becoming extinct, what do you think happens to the two of you? Aurelia demanded. I'm pretty sure you stop existing too. So? Brittany asked. Who's saying this? Estrella asked. Your kind came to murder Cole and myself. If you had your way, we'd be dead. My father was one person who plotted against you, Aurelia replied. I get you want to put the blame on me. I understand you think there is some kind of vengeance to be had by spilling my blood. My love, she could become a slave to do our bidding, Estrella cooed. We can watch her spirit suffer until it snuffs out from a lack of desire to live. How delicious,
Brittany replied. Suddenly, a hideous howl burst out from the ground below. Spraying out among the dirt were fragments of tooth bone before a ghastly ghoul stood before them. Dressed in garments created from the teeth of small children, it hissed in annoyance. "What are you doing here?" demanded Brittany. "I didn't get a memo from hell announcing your impending arrival."
"I sensed betrayal," Teresa replied curtly. "Should I have concern?"
"What?" gasped Brittany.
"Why would we ever want to betray you?"
Estrella giggled.
"You snorting the dreams of children again to get that buzz of energy again."
"Silence!" Teresa ordered.
"I am more interested in Aurelia. Look at the beauty and the glow she has. Why are you wearing a mask? Reveal your beautiful face."
"You don't want to see what is behind the mask," warned Brittany. "I should have to die 1,000 times to forget just how vile it is."
"Oh, my dear sister, then I must die at your side 1,000 times,"
Estrella replied.
"We are all each other has left now."
"Silence!" Teresa snapped. "I ordered you to remove your mask. You will not defy my commands. Otherwise, there will be hell to pay."
"Wait, why aren't you a fairy?"
Aurelia asked.
"You are the Tooth Fairy, but you are a ghoul. Imagine the nightmares if children found out their beloved fables were nothing more than a ghoul stealing their teeth in the night." Teresa chuckled. "I used to leave a calling card behind. The Tooth Fairy. There is this random fact that comes and goes of using the first 3 letters of your name as a nickname, and, well, I just used it to my marketing advantage. With the right budget and even better backing, you can still project the image you want."
"What do you mean?" demanded Aurelia.
"I order you to remove your mask," commanded Teresa.
Racing to her mask, Aurelia ripped it from her face. With it, it brought her golden fur and beautiful features to light.
"It is hideous," hissed Brittany. "Kill it with fire."
"What if it doesn't die?" screamed Estrella.
"And burn it again,"
cried Brittany.
"Will you 2 idiots knock it off?"
Teresa demanded.
"She is beautiful. All those who cast their eyes on her will fall in love with her. If I show her to the humans, she will inspire 1,000 stories about her."
"Too bad this is where her story ends," Brittany hissed.
"On the contrary, this is just where her story begins."
Teresa chuckled.
"Are you so certain?" Brittany asked. "Sister, we could help her die."
"Yes, we could, my love," Estrella agreed. "How sinfully wonderful it would be."
"I would just seal you off in this realm," Teresa replied. "The humans don't need the holidays, and if it becomes too much for them, I can train Aurelia to take over the holidays. I can just have the humans reimagine the dead. Then they'll become fantasy creatures in my other realm. You don't get it. We don't need evil to survive. We will thrive and survive without you. Your choice is to either give in to good and have the chance at mercy.
They'll just lie, Aurelia replied. It's how they spread their infection the fastest, so they can spew their nasty hatred. They mean to destroy realms and lives. It's pure rage in their hearts that makes them so dangerous. A hateful heart is easier to persuade than one which loves. You may entice evil now to try good's side, but they'll simply give you just enough information to hurt yourself. You cannot believe the lies of rabbits, warned Brittany. They will do everything they can to deceive you. My dealings with rabbits and witches has been vastly different, Teresa replied. I find rabbits are more trustworthy with facts, but witches dwell in the misery of misinformation. My dear sister, it would seem she can see through our charade. Brittany snickered.
Yes, my love,
Estrella laughed.
so it would seem. But the rabbit will never serve you like witches would.
That's because in a world of good it isn't about servitude, Teresa replied. Once you remove greed, after you remove hate, when you subtract rage and war, it leaves you with something evil that will never be capable of. That's peace. You want to continue to drum up a battle and have lost sensibility for spite, and your boils fester and spew the infection around you as you take out the people who surround you. It's not just you which you destroy, but festering evil infects others, and they draw enemy lines where they never needed to be. The death of all life is what we want, Brittany replied. I will punish you for what you did to my beloved, Estrella agreed. Cole, my love, these things are bothering me. Would you be a dear and destroy them? A haunting howl crept through the area as the air grew colder. Soon, the blue orbs of the wolfman, saliva dripping from bared fangs as it drew closer. The stench of decaying flesh filled the air. Aurelia, we need to leave here, Teresa replied. I don't have the powers the witches do in this realm. They have bred evil to collect here, and with it their power has risen. Another snarl escaped from the mouth of the werewolf before another snap in their direction, and a low, rumbling growl began. I'm ready to go now if you are, Aurelia replied. You'll never get past Cole in time, Estrella said. But please, try it for my entertainment, Brittany said. Suddenly, the weight of the werewolf slammed against Aurelia and knocked her hard to the ground, the air escaping her lungs. Aurelia screamed as the saliva of the creature dripped in her face as the growling fangs grew closer and the creature's hot, rancid breath warmed her face. As Aurelia tried to wiggle free, the werewolf adjusted its weight to keep her pinned hard to the ground. Shoving back hard on the beast, she made a slight indent into the muscle mass of the beast. Tears streamed down the rabbit's face as she prepared herself to become the feast of the creature. Please don't kill me, Aurelia pleaded.
But death is your destiny, Brittany cooed. Why wouldn't you want to embrace the darkest point of your destiny?
What if her destiny is not die? Teresa interjected.
Everyone will die, Brittany chuckled. Everything that lives has to die. You don't get off this realm any other way. I don't care who you think you are or how you think the story will progress differently for you. You live, you die. The suffering in the years between is the only difference from one person to the next. Suffering is the sweetest part of life, Estrella cooed, especially when the suffering belongs to someone besides you.
With a howl and another snap of its mouth, the beast's fangs sliced into the right shoulder of Aurelia as she screamed in pain. Struggling beneath the bite of the beast, she twisted and turned as the fangs shredded her flesh more during the struggle.
It hurts, Aurelia screamed. Oh, God, please. At least you understand how to plead your case to me, Brittany replied. Not that a hideous rabbit would ever get a chance to leave this realm alive. Now that the Savior has bled, come protect her, my warrior of the dead. Until evil had fled, bring something this creature will dread. I command the spell to return the beast to hell, Teresa whispered. Suddenly, the ground beneath them trembled and convulsed. The werewolf adjusted on Aurelia and buried its claws into Aurelia's flesh. Her skin popped open, and blood spilled as the creature used its claws and brute strength to prevent the rabbit from moving. Just beyond it, rock piled on top of stone. It lay on top of itself as a golem of stone formed from beyond. The beast of rock and stone soon doubled in size and strength of the werewolf. How will your dirt, rock, and clay save the day? Chuckled Estrella. My coal is still the strongest of all. Grabbing the werewolf by the ears, it howled in pain as the golem drew back and ripped from the creature's skull. It ripped off with a sickening sound, and the werewolf snarled in painful agony before rising off of Aurelia and picking her up roughly like a rag doll and tossed her body hard against the ground, knocking the wind out of her. It then pivoted and turned, then pounced before knocking the golem to the ground. The golem bursting into rubble as it struck the ground, then reforming quickly and restoring to form before it flung a hard punch to the face of the werewolf, its fist bursting into dust before the rubble fell to the ground and the golem reabsorbed it. What is this trickery? Estrella asked. This is unlike the golems you released in the past, Brittany replied. Another fist flew from the golem and struck the werewolf in the stomach, knocking the beast back as it slammed against the ground. Again, the golem's fist burst into dust as it contacted the werewolf. Enraged, the creature's eyes went from the eerie blue to an unholy red. The muscle mass on the beast became thicker, denser, and stronger. Crouching for a second, it prepared itself and then lunged at the golem, striking the creature hard in the center of the chest and slamming it against the ground. The creature burst into dust before reassembling and then rising again to face the beast. Kill the spellcaster. It will go faster, Brittany snickered. Angrily, the beast snapped in annoyance as the werewolf turned its attention to Teresa. The ghoul hissed at the werewolf before being struck by the creature's paw, the strength knocking Teresa several feet back
and she hit the ground, and it knocked the wind out of her. With a lunge, the werewolf pinned her down and growled with the scent of rotting flesh. Aurelia darted towards the creature and slammed against its side. Her impact made little difference. In annoyance, the werewolf slammed her with its paw and knocked her again to the side. "You need to get out of here," Teresa pleaded. "If you die, hope dies with you. Don't worry about me, Aurelia. So long as you stay alive, we can still restore peace to the holiday realm." "What will you do when your savior dies?" Estrella asked. "I had to face changes when Cole died. All we have left is the beast that once lived in him, so he's just a shell of what he once was." Aurelia struggled to get up as Brittany walked over to her. "Make her struggles in vain. Restrain the rabbit until victory we obtain," Estrella chanted. Suddenly, a purple electrical pulse burst from her fingers and knocked Aurelia to the ground. It encompassed her with its evil waves of power, and the rabbit lay powerful on the ground, held in place by the powers. "Now she won't be able to help you," Estrella replied. "My love, I believe soon we will win, and we can continue with our destruction." "Yes, dear sister," Brittany excitedly hissed. "Then the realms can suffer sweetly as our dear brother delivers them gifts of excruciating agony." "It looks like you lost all hope," Estrella snickered. "Your savior is now gone. Your golem defeated. Make her suffering slow and delightful for me, my love." The werewolf snapped, snarled, and then clamped its fangs down on Teresa's left ear, severing it instantly from her skull. It ripped with a sickening sound as blood bubbled from the wound of where the wound was. Slimy saliva dripping from its tongue, the werewolf licked the wound, and as quickly as the bleeding had begun, it stopped. Yet the agonizing pain remained. "Werewolf saliva has cauterizing properties," Brittany laughed. "My dear brother will ensure you can suffer much longer. You will regret this day in the hours that follow." In response, the werewolf unleashed its claws, so they ripped through the left shoulder of the ghoul. Teresa screamed in agony again, as the wolf hungrily lapped at her blood, and the bleeding ceased again. But the agonizing ripples in her flesh remained. Teresa wriggled her right hand free, and she ripped hair from the creature. As the werewolf hissed and bit the ring finger from Teresa's hand, she dropped the hair she had plucked from the creature. It struck the ground and flashed instantly. "What is this?" Brittany asked. "There's something you clearly missed," Teresa replied. "My golem remains alive as long as I am alive and pissed. I just had him build himself bigger and stronger before he crawled back up here, based on the analysis of the werewolf and its current power, so you wouldn't be able to expect his return, and I win." Dirt and rocks sprayed from an opening through the ground. The golem returned with an increase of a foot in height and triple the muscle mass of the werewolf. Drawing back its fist, it slammed hard against the creature and knocked it from the position it had on Teresa, its fist bursting into dust. "You can't kill him," Estrella replied. "You don't have silver. All your efforts are in vain. I guess you don't realize the mineral in the ground has its own set of veins that run through it." Teresa painfully chuckled. "Silver mixed with copper
and a dusting of platinum. No, it's not possible, Estrella hissed. No one knows about that combination. I sifted through the legends and the lies, Teresa replied. Then I summoned my own creatures of darkness to determine what it truly takes to defeat evil and to make certain it doesn't come back again. Kill her at once, my love, commanded Estrella. Getting into a low crouch, the beast extended its claws and snarled at Teresa. With a howl, it propelled itself, using all its power as it launched itself on the ground. Forcefully clapping its hands together, the golem exploded its hands into dust, and they reformed with a precious metal axe head. Swinging hard, it knocked the head from the beast as the body and head slammed lifelessly against Teresa. My love, cried Estrella. There's no time to mourn, Brittany replied. We need to go, dear sister. This is far from over, Estrella warned the ghoul. Like I said, this is far from over, Teresa snapped. Good luck freeing your savior. The sisters joined each other's hands, and a howling wind kicked up in the area as it struck the area with power. A dust devil spun, and then burst from the dirt, and it picked up the witches and tore them from the area. With an evil, demonic screech, the dust devil tore off across the land with the witches. With the danger gone, the golem burst into dust and returned to the earth in an instant. Dragging herself up, Teresa struggled in pain as she made her way to the rabbit surrounded in the evil purple energy field. I'm going to need to get help, Teresa whispered. Extending her fingers towards Aurelia, she summoned the energies of light that remained in the area and cast a spell of protection over the rabbit for now. Slowly, she chanted, As old as the tales of folk, cloak our Savior damned by the witch's misbehavior. Wrap her in teeth, covering her until the hour 13th, so she has no concern until my return. This isn't the end, Teresa promised. Soon, the next part of our journey will begin again. Raising her fists into the air, Teresa dug into the depths of the holiday realm as she made her way back to get all the help and power needed to free the golden rabbit, all with just enough time to still save Easter. To be continued. You've been listening to Werewolf of Winter Woods, written by Joel M. Andre, read for you by Scott MacDonald. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned for Part 2.